The marble was cold against my cheek. That was the first thing I registered, cold, not pain. 300 people had gone silent at the same moment, which is a strange sound, a kind of suction. My husband was standing over a woman crying on the floor 10 feet from me, his hand on her shoulder the way he used to put his hand on mine when I woke from a nightmare. She was 29 years old. She was 3 months pregnant. She was not supposed to be there at all. And James was shouting at the ceiling at God, at anyone who would listen, "You pushed a pregnant woman, she's carrying my child, I had never touched her." Paul was already yelling, "James, she didn't touch her. I saw from here." My mother was already climbing over the pew. "You son of a bitch, you kicked my daughter, you kicked her, and she jabbed a finger at Sarah on the floor, you lying little, she was 14 feet away from you, I was looking at her, nobody heard them." Everybody heard Sarah crying. What I did next, I've thought about a lot since. Not because I'm proud of it, because it was the first decision I made in 6 years that wasn't about holding something up. I pushed myself to sitting, not fast. My left hip registered the impact, now a dull seam of pain I filed to deal with later. My dove gray dress had a smear of altar flower water along the hem, the rehearsal lilies. I remember looking at the water stain with professional attention. The way you look at a hairline crack in a load-bearing wall here, is damage here, is the map of it here, is what it cost to repair. Thomas Kowalski was still filming. I saw him at the side aisle, camera locked to his shoulder, face the color of chalk. His second camera on the tripod hadn't moved. Both little red lights were on. Good. I got my feet under me. My mother reached for my elbow and I let her. Her hand was shaking so hard, her rings clicked against each other. James hadn't looked at me once since the kick. He was still kneeling over Sarah, one arm around her back, the other hand on her belly, as if he could feel through a suit jacket whether a 12-week fetus was all right. Sarah's makeup had broken apart. She was saying something I didn't mean, over and over in the rhythm of a person who'd stopped choosing her words. I took one step toward them. Helen tightened her grip. "Don't," she said. "Quiet now, only for me. Margaret, don't. He's not worth the fight in front of these people. Walk." I looked at her, then at James, still turned away, then at the congregation. 300 faces in a single expression I couldn't name, half shock, half the hot eagerness people can't keep off their faces when something they'll talk about for the rest of their lives is happening in real time. Linda from the choir was weeping into a hymnal. My father-in-law was still at the altar holding the Bible open to 1 Corinthians, the ribbon marker dangling. Paul had both hands on his brother's shoulders and was trying to pull him back off Sarah, and James was shrugging him off without looking up. I said one sentence. I said it loud enough to carry. "James, look around. You're going to want to remember this exactly." He didn't lift his head. I turned and my mother turned with me, and we walked the aisle, the wrong direction, altar to door, against the run of 15 years, and nobody stopped us and nobody followed. The organist, bless him, was a professional. He started playing something. I don't know what. I couldn't have named a hymn that morning if you'd put a gun to my head. In the parking lot, the sun was the kind of clean spring white that makes you squint. Helen took the keys out of my hand because my fingers had gone clumsy. She had not driven my car in 4 years. She drove it like she owned it. "Buckhead," she said. "Not a question." "Home," I said. She pulled out of the church lot and onto Roswell Road, and neither of us spoke for 8 minutes. I watched a Publix go by. A Waffle House. A CVS with a handwritten sign in the window for a lost cat. I kept wanting to text James, "Where are you? Are you coming home the way I would have half an hour ago?" And my thumb actually reached for the phone in my lap twice, before my brain caught up with what my thumb was doing. Muscle memory is a stupid animal. It doesn't know the building has fallen. Margaret, my mother, said at a red light on Peachtree. "Not yet, Mom." Okay. The light changed. Our house had been set up for the reception that wasn't going to happen. White hydrangeas on every surface Susan the wedding planner could find. A bar cart in the foyer. A 3-tier cake in the refrigerator. I had chosen the cake flavors in February. Pistachio with raspberry because James had once at a restaurant in Savannah in 2011 eaten a pistachio torte and said it was the best thing he'd ever put in his mouth. And I had filed that away the way I file everything. Because that's what an architect does. And 15 years later I had ordered it for a vow renewal he'd been planning to end, with a confession he never had the nerve to deliver. I walked past the cake. I walked past the flowers. I walked straight down the hall to the master bath, and I turned on the water as hot as it would go, and I got in the tub with my dress still on, and then I changed my mind and climbed out and peeled the dress off and dropped it wet on the fake tile and got back in. I sat with my knees pulled up. The water was close to scalding. I watched the steam lift off it. I didn't cry. I didn't think about James. I didn't think about Sarah. I thought about the first time I'd seen a tin of chipped beef at the grocery store after Daniel died. The can had been on the same shelf for a decade, and I had walked past it every week without registering it, and then one Thursday in July of 2020, I'd stopped the cart dead in the Facklaslations 20-cent aisle because Daniel had loved chipped beef on toast and I had never in my life made it for him, not once because it wasn't a real meal. It was his grandfather's trash food, and I had promised myself I would someday and I hadn't, and I stood in the Kroger on Piedmont for 7 full minutes, staring at a tin of dried meat, and I did not cry there either. I bought it. I brought it home. I put it in the pantry. It was still in the pantry 4 years later, and I was sitting in a bathtub in a ruined marriage thinking about chipped beef. That's how you know you're in shock. Your brain picks the weirdest drawer and opens it. The water went tepid. My mother knocked. Margaret. I didn't answer. She knocked again 10 minutes later. Margaret, the water's going cold. I can hear it from out here. Nothing. The third time she didn't knock. She just said through the door, I'm coming in, and came. She didn't look at me in the tub. She pulled a towel off the rack, opened it, held it up as a screen. I didn't ask if you were okay, she said. I asked you to come out. I stood. My knees were unsteady. She wrapped the towel around me and didn't let go of the ends. There you are, she said. My hands were shaking. I noticed it because she noticed it. Her eyes went to them and came back to my face, and she didn't mention it, which was the kindest thing anyone did for me that day. She made me tea in the kitchen. English breakfast, 2 sugars, a splash of whole milk, my childhood tea, not my adult tea. I let her. I was wearing my robe. The dress was still on the bathroom floor. 6 months ago. That's when I should have asked. I remember it exactly because I remember how carefully I decided not to. James had left his phone on the kitchen island while he went to shower, and it had lit up while I was rinsing a coffee mug, and the preview had shown the name, Sarah, and a single sentence. Thank you for telling me about Daniel today. Nobody talks about him. It's like he never existed. I had read it. I had put the phone down in the exact position it had been in. I had finished rinsing the mug. I had walked into my office, the one I had built for myself in 2017, when a third bedroom stopped, meaning what it used to mean, and I had sat in front of a set of schematics for a public library in Powder Springs, and I had not moved for 10 minutes. The thought I had, I remember exactly. It was, if I ask him who Sarah is, we'll have to talk about Daniel. I don't know how to talk about Daniel, so I won't ask. And I hadn't. 6 months. Helen slid the tea across the island. Drink it. I drank it. Well, she said after a minute. She was looking past me at the cake through the glass of the refrigerator. At least we won't have to return the gifts. You're still legally married to the son of a bitch. Something happened in my throat that was not a sob. It was a small, sharp sound, half a laugh, 1 beat long through the nose. The first noise my body had made, I realized, since I'd said, James, look around. Helen's eyes came back to me. She didn't smile. She nodded once like, there you are again. She reached down beside her chair and put something on the island between us. A manila envelope. Brown. No writing on it. Before you open it, she said, I want you to know 2 things. 1, I didn't open it myself. 2, you're allowed to be angry at me for having it. Mom. 2 months ago, she said I was getting a coffee at the Dunkin' on Roswell. His car was in the parking lot. He didn't see me. A woman was in the passenger seat, and she was crying, and he had his hand on the side of her face. I looked at the envelope. I didn't touch it. I called Miriam Goldberg, my mother said. You remember Miriam. She retired out of the bureau 6 years ago. She does private work now. I paid her for 6 weeks. Mom, I didn't tell you because I didn't want to be the reason you left him. I wanted you to have the choice. I also wanted you to have the information when you needed it. Which, she said, is now. I opened it. Address. Schedule. 3 photographs. A printout of an employment record. Sarah Chen, administrative assistant, AutoNation, Atlanta, corporate franchise. Not one of James's independent dealers. Corporate. I read that line twice. My mother watched me read it twice. My phone buzzed on the counter. An email. From Thomas Kowalski. Mrs. Ashford. I don't know what to do with what I have. I had 2 cameras running this morning. I'm attaching the raw footage from camera 2, which was on the side aisle. I saw what happened from my angle. I also saw what didn't happen. I'm sending this because you should decide, not me. I'm sorry, Tom. I opened the laptop. I clicked the file. I watched it once. Then I watched it again because I owed it to myself to be sure. Sarah had gone down on her own. 12 weeks pregnant, argument on her feet. No blood sugar, vasovagal drop. I was 14 feet away. You could see the tile between us. You could hear Paul shouting she didn't touch her from the second pew. You could hear my mother's voice at the edge of the frame. I closed the laptop. I looked at Helen. I need a lawyer in the morning, I said. Priya Desai if she'll take me. And I need you not to call Dad yet. Give me 48 hours to have a plan before he gets on a plane. Done. And Mom. Yeah, baby. Thank you for Miriam. She reached across the island and put her hand on top of mine and didn't squeeze. Just set it there. Warm. Heavier than it looked. I pulled the laptop back across and opened a new email and began to type. Miss Desai, I need a consultation. Tomorrow. 8 a.m. if you have it. Domestic violence witnessed by 300 people documented on 2 camera angles plus a 6-week PI file and an employment record that matters. I don't want to press criminal charges. I want precise civil and social consequences, and I want them fast. I can pay your retainer today. I hit send at 7:14 p.m. I closed the laptop. My mother refilled my tea without asking. I didn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen island in my robe with the manila envelope open in front of me, and I read every page of Miriam Goldberg's report twice, and I didn't cry about any of it. That was going to come. I could feel the shape of it coming. Not grief for the marriage, which had been something else for a long time, but grief for the 6 years I had spent being a woman who didn't ask. That grief had a date on it. It was going to arrive. It wasn't going to arrive tonight. Tonight I had 48 hours and a list to build. At 5:47 a.m. Priya Desai wrote back, yes, come now. Priya Desai's office was on the 18th floor of a building on West Peachtree that had been designed in 1987 by a firm I'd interned at the summer after my second year of architecture school. The lobby still had the original travertine. The elevator still smelled like the same industrial cleaner. I stood in it at 7:52 a.m. with a laptop bag, a manila envelope, and a to-go cup of coffee. Helen had pressed into my hand on the way out the door, and I looked at my face in the brushed steel panel and thought, you don't look like a woman who got kicked yesterday. I looked like a woman going to a morning meeting. That was going to be useful. Priya met me at the door herself. No receptionist at that hour. She was smaller than I remembered. I'd met her once at a bar association fundraiser 2 years back, and her hair was wet at the ends like she'd showered fast. Sit, she said. Coffee's fresh. Talk. I sat. I talked. I slid the laptop across first, then the envelope. She watched the video from camera 2 all the way through without moving. Then she rewound and watched it again. Then she opened the envelope and laid the contents out on her desk like a hand of cards: the PI file, the AutoNation employment record, the photographs, Helen's note clipped to the top of the stack in her small, careful cursive. Priya tapped the AutoNation line with the capped end of her pen. Your mother's a menace. She's from Macon. Explains it. She set the pen down. Okay. In 20 years of family law, this is the cleanest domestic violence case I have ever laid eyes on. 2 angles, 2 witnesses on audio. A confession of physical contact on video because he never denies what he did, he just reframes it. In Georgia, you can have him arrested before lunch. Felony aggravated assault. 1 to 20. You can sue for emotional damages, and you will win. You'd be on his paycheck for the next 2 decades. I don't want his paycheck. Tell me what you want. I had been up all night building the list. I read it off. Divorce filed Monday. No contest. 50-50 on assets. House on the market by Tuesday morning. He moves out by Friday. I move out by the end of the month. I will not press criminal charges. The video goes to exactly 3 places. AutoNation corporate HR, not the dealership corporate, because their franchise code has a public conduct clause, and they'll move inside 72 hours. Pastor Williams at Peachtree Methodist, with no editorial from me, and Paul Ashford, my brother-in-law, so that he finds out from me, and not from a forward. Priya wrote as I talked. When I finished, she looked up. Why are you handing him the clean version of his life falling apart? Because the dirty version makes me the story. Wife presses charges. Architect sues husband for $40,000 a year until she's 70. His lawyer gets on a podium and says I'm cold. Calculating. Never showed him love. Built a library in Powder Springs while he was grieving. Some of that will be true enough to hurt. And the story won't be the kick anymore. It'll be me. And this way the story is him. Forever. Through his employer, through his church, through his brother. 3 rooms he has to walk back into for the rest of his life and explain. She set down the pen. Miss Ashford. Margaret. Margaret. I need to say something and I need you to hear it, because my malpractice insurance requires that I say it and because I actually believe it. You are in shock. You are presenting like you are not in shock. But you are. Whatever you decide today, I'm going to put in writing and sit on for 48 hours before I file. Because I have watched clients make cathedrals out of the first 24 hours and knock them down on day 3. I'm doing that with you whether you want it or not. Fine. Also, she tapped the AutoNation page again. You understand that if I send this video to corporate, he loses his job. Yes. Inside a week. Probably 3 days. Yes. And that after a termination like that in this industry, in this city, he is not coming back at the same level, ever. I understand. I need to hear you say it out loud. My husband will not be a dealership general manager again. He will be a service writer somewhere in Marietta, making 40% of what he made last Friday, and he will have done that to himself, and I am the mechanism. She wrote one more line, closed the legal pad. Okay, she said. I'll take it. Retainer is $15,000. You'll get the engagement letter by noon. Go home. Call your father. Eat something. I stood. At the door I stopped. Miss Desai. One more thing. Priya. I'm going to see Sarah today. The woman on the floor. She looked at me for a long second. Why? Because I don't know what I don't know. And I'm going to have to make decisions about this child for the rest of my life at the edges of my life, and I would rather make them with information than without. Do you want my advice? Probably not. Go anyway, she said. But take your mother. If she's from Macon, she's useful. Helen stayed in the car. The building was on Juniper in Midtown, a 5-story walk-up with a Thai place on the ground floor. 4B. I pressed the buzzer and waited for the lock to release without speaking into the intercom because I didn't know what I'd say. The door clicked open. 4 flights. My left hip reminded me about the kick on flight 3. Sarah opened the door on the second knock. Her eyes were swollen, almost shut. She had on sweatpants and one of those oversized cardigans women her age wear like armor. She looked at me and didn't register surprise. She stepped back and held the door. I was going to text you this morning. How did you get my number? I didn't. I assumed you'd have mine by now. I did. Okay, she said. Come in. The apartment was smaller than I expected. 1 room plus a kitchen, a fold-out couch, a desk under the window with a closed laptop on it, 1 framed photograph on a bookshelf. Sarah, maybe 22, with an older Asian woman who had Sarah's nose and better posture. I looked at it and looked away. She didn't offer me anything. She sat on the couch and gestured at the only chair. I took the chair. For a full minute, neither of us said a word. I had been the one who'd come. I was not going to speak first. I wasn't trying to ruin your wedding, she said finally. You did regardless. I know. I waited. 6 months ago, she said, I asked him who the boy in the picture on his desk was. He has a photograph, in a black frame, behind his phone where he'd see it on every call. I'd worked for him for 2 years at that point, and I'd never asked. It wasn't my business. That day I asked. He didn't answer me for 10 seconds, and then he sat down at his desk and started crying, and he couldn't stop for about 20 minutes. And he told me his son Daniel had died in a car accident in March of 2020, and his wife had not said the boy's name aloud in his hearing in 6 years. Something went cold along the top of my sternum. I didn't let it onto my face. My mother died 14 months ago, Sarah said. Pancreatic cancer. 10 weeks from diagnosis to funeral. I didn't take any days off except the Friday of the service. I came in Monday like nothing happened. Nobody at work knew. I didn't tell them. I know what it is to have a thing you're not allowed to mention. So, when he told me, I sat on the other side of his desk for a while, and I let him have it out. That was the start. When did it stop being the start? About 3 months later. She wasn't defending herself. She was putting the facts down one at a time like a person returning items at the end of a job. I was on the pill, she said. The 6-month shot wasn't an option because of my thyroid. 1% failure rate. I found out 3 weeks ago. I told him 2 weeks ago. He went quiet for almost 2 minutes. Then he said I get another chance to be a father. And I knew right then. Knew what? That he wasn't picking me. He was picking erasing the last 6 years. I happened to be the person it was happening through. I didn't answer. He has a drawing on his office wall, she said. Pinned to the corkboard by the window. A bridge. Signed in the corner. Daniel Ashford, age 10. He looks at it before every phone call. I've watched him do it for 2 years. My hands were on my knees. I looked down at them. They were steady. I kept them steady. I came to the church this morning because I realized Saturday night I couldn't let you stand at an altar and say the words to a man who was leaving and did not have the nerve to tell you. I tried to get there early enough to catch you outside. Traffic on Lenox was backed up to the mall. By the time I got to the narthex, the processional had started. I tried to turn around and walk out the side. Security caught my arm because I'd come in the wrong door. James saw me from the altar. He left his father holding the Bible, and he ran down the center aisle, and he grabbed my other arm and said, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" I told him I was telling you. He said, "Not like this." We were pulling at each other. I got dizzy. I have vasovagal syncope. I had it the week my mother died. I felt it coming, and I tried to put my hand on the end of a pew, and I missed, and I went down toward the altar railing. You were 6 steps away. I saw your face. I remember your face. And I said she pushed me. And I do not know why I said it except that I needed somebody to be at fault in the next half second who wasn't me, and it couldn't be James because if it was James I was alone again. She stopped. She wasn't crying. She was past it. I'm sorry. I'm not asking you to believe that helps. I sat with it for a beat. The baby, I said. Do you know what it is yet? Not yet. Next appointment. When it's born. Whatever it is. Yes. Don't name him Daniel. She looked at me. I wasn't going to. Good. I stood up. I put my hand on the back of the chair for 1 second because my hip was loud about it and then I didn't need to. I walked to the door. I turned around. Sarah. Yes. He's not going to keep you. He's going to try. He's going to mean it. Inside a year, he's going to look at you one morning and realize he picked you at the worst possible moment of his life, and that's the whole of what you are to him. I'm telling you because you seem to be a person who would rather know. She nodded once. Small. Exhausted. Yes, she said. I already do. Helen didn't ask. She put the car in drive. We got onto I-75 going north, and the city slid past the window, and I watched a billboard for a personal injury attorney who had been running the same face on the same billboard for 12 years. I thought about how long a decision takes to show, how a marriage can go hollow for 6 years before anyone outside the marriage notices the sound is different. At the house, I walked past the cake again without looking at it, down the hall, past my office, to the closed door at the end, Daniel's room. I put my hand on the knob. I didn't open it. Not yet. Not today. But closer than I'd been in 6 years, 4 months, and 12 days. I'd added a day without meaning to the way you do, and I stood there with my palm on the brass for maybe 30 seconds before I turned around and went back to the kitchen. Helen had made eggs. She slid a plate across the island. Eat. I ate. While I was eating, I pulled the laptop over and opened a new message and typed it without rereading, because rereading was how you lost nerve, and I was not going to lose nerve tonight. James. Sunday. 4:00 p.m. The house. Come alone. Bring nothing. Tell no one you're coming. If you don't show up, you'll get the rest of this through Priya Desai. And the difference between those two versions of your life is going to be enormous. I trust you to understand which one I'm offering. I sent it. The reply came inside the minute. I'll be there. I closed the laptop. I finished the eggs. Helen took the plate to the sink without comment. Mom. I'm going to be okay. She didn't turn from the sink. I know, baby, she said. But it's nice of you to tell me anyway. I sat at the island and watched my mother wash a plate in my kitchen in the last house I was ever going to live in with my husband, and I thought about the list in my head. And I thought about the 48 hours Priya had bought me, and I thought about Sarah's hands on her knees in a room too small for what had happened in it, and I did not feel powerful. I didn't feel vindicated. I didn't feel anything a hook writer would recognize. I felt like a person who had 3 days to do the cleanest demolition of her life. At 3:57 Sunday afternoon, I heard the garage door. He still had the opener. He didn't come in through the front. I heard the garage, and then the interior door into the mudroom, and then the quiet catch of him stopping to take his shoes off, 15 years of training his mother's rule, never worn in the house, and the small human mechanical sound of that nearly undid. Ignore me for a second. I gave myself the second. Then I took it back. I was at the kitchen island with my laptop open, a green folder at my left elbow, and a mug of coffee I had poured 40 minutes ago and not touched. I had not dressed for this. I was in jeans and a gray sweater, and I had pulled my hair back with a clip the way I did when I was drafting. This was a work meeting. That was the frame. I had decided the frame at 9 o'clock Saturday night, and I had not let myself leave it once. He came around the corner from the mudroom and stopped. He'd lost weight in 3 days. Not in his face, in the way he stood. The shape of him was wrong. He was holding a ball cap in one hand that he wasn't wearing and didn't know what to do with. He'd shaved badly on one side of his jaw. "Margaret, sit down, James. Can I sit down? Don't talk yet. I'm going to tell you when." He sat, the stool across from mine. He set the cap on the island between us like an offering, and then moved it embarrassed to his knee. I turned the laptop around. I hit play. He watched it. Camera 2 is a better angle than camera 1. I had watched it 11 times by that Sunday afternoon, and I could tell you the timestamps on every relevant beat. At 008, Sarah steps into the narthex. At 019, James turns his head on the altar and sees her. At 023, he leaves his father and starts down the aisle. At 041, I come in through the main doors with my father behind me. At 052, James and Sarah are at the back by the baptismal font, and he has her arm and she has his jacket, and they are pulling in opposite directions. At 104, Sarah's head tips. At 106, she goes down free of his grip, her hand reaching for a pew that isn't there. At 108, I'm 9 feet away, walking. At 111, she says the sentence. At 114, he closes the distance to me and his leg comes up. On the 10th viewing, I had counted 14 seconds from her fall to his foot. 14 seconds in which nobody in that church could have reasonably thought I'd touched her, including him. He watched it through. He didn't move when it ended. His hands were folded over the ball cap in his lap, and he was staring at the black screen, and his face was doing something I had only seen it do once before the morning of the funeral in 2020, which was nothing. No expression at all. The face of a man whose body had gone out to meet a truth too big for the face to process yet. "Now you can talk," I said. "Tell me why." He opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. "I don't have a good answer. I'm not asking for a good one. Margaret, tell me why." He put the cap on the counter and pressed both palms down flat on either side of it, like he needed the marble to be real. "I wasn't thinking about you. That's the first true thing. I wasn't thinking about you at all. I saw her on the floor, and she was pregnant, and I lost the thread of where I was. I lost the thread of who I was standing next to. I lost the thread of the last 20 minutes. I was looking at a woman on a floor who was crying, and I needed someone to have done it to her, and you were the closest person, and you kicked me. I kicked you. In front of 300 people. My mother. Your brother. Your father holding a Bible you bought him for Christmas in 2013. Yes. In God's house, as my mother pointed out at some volume. Yes. I waited. He let out a breath that had no shape. "I'm going to tell you the rest of it," you asked. "I'm going to answer the question you actually asked. Go ahead." I said our son's name out loud to her. There it was. He said it looking at the counter, not at me. I don't think he could have said it looking at me. I said his name out loud to her 6 months ago in my office, and I hadn't said his name out loud to you since the service, and every time I tried to bring him up to you after for years, you would stand up and walk out of whatever room we were in. You would go to the office. You would go to the garage. You would go to bed. Once you redrew the kitchen. You didn't redo it, Margaret. You drew it on a legal pad at midnight. The whole thing. Because I had said his name at the dinner table, and you couldn't stay at the dinner table. I watched you build things for 6 years instead of look at me, and I became a ghost who lived in your house and made car payments, and I couldn't tell you I was a ghost, because you would have stood up and redrawn the living room. I didn't move. She asked me who he was. The photograph on my desk. I told her. I cried in my own office. In the middle of the afternoon, like a child. And she didn't stand up. She sat. She sat and she listened and she didn't leave the room. That's the whole beginning. That's all of it. The rest came later, and I am not going to sit here and tell you that what came later was her fault, because I am a 43-year-old man and it was mine. But that was the door. That was the door I walked through. Her sitting in a chair and not leaving. His voice didn't break on any of it. That was almost the worst part. He had rehearsed this. He had been sitting alone for 3 days and he had practiced. "I kicked you," he said, "because when she hit the floor yesterday, I saw a woman who was going to get up and stay in the room, and I saw you standing there, and I could not, in the 1.5 seconds my brain had, I could not separate you from every time you had left me alone with him. I kicked you because you were the woman who left, and she was the woman who didn't. I am not saying that makes sense. I am saying that is what happened inside the man who did it. That is the honest answer." The kitchen was very quiet. The fridge clicked on. I let him sit in it. 30 seconds. Then a full minute. I watched the clock on the microwave. I have always been good at letting other people sit in what they've just said. My turn, I said. He nodded. The night after the funeral, I said I went upstairs to check on you. You were sitting on his bed. You had his fleece jacket in your lap, the blue one. You were saying his name. You said it maybe 30 times. I stood in the doorway. I watched you for 2 minutes. And I thought, if I go in that room, I am not coming out. One of us has to keep this house standing. You or me. And you were already on the bed, Margaret. I'm not finished. I went downstairs. I made coffee. I opened my laptop and I worked until 4 in the morning on the community center in Chambly. I made that decision at 11:37 at night on March 14, 2020 without telling you. I decided that I would be the walls, and you would be the grief. I decided it for both of us. I did not ask you. I have held that decision in place by leaving every room you said his name in for 6 years, 4 months, and 13 days. And I have told myself the entire time that I was protecting you. Margaret, I wasn't. I was protecting me. I was afraid that if I sat down in a room where his name was being said out loud, I would never stand back up, and I had made my whole life out of standing, and I was not going to put that down for anyone, including you. Including him. I was not crying. My hands were on the folder. They were steady. They had been steady for about 90 minutes now, which was something. What you did Saturday is your own. You will carry it. No one can carry it for you. But it is also true that this marriage was hollow for a long time, and I hollowed it very cleanly in small, consistent increments over 6 years, and I did it while congratulating myself on being the reasonable one. I am telling you this once. I will not say it again, and I will not say it to anyone else. Because it is not a defense of what you did, and it is not going to be written into anything, Priya files. But you asked why. And the real why is older than Sarah. He was crying then, silently. He didn't lift his hands to his face. He let it happen. I opened the folder. Terms, I said. He nodded without speaking. Divorce filed tomorrow morning. No contest. 50-50. House goes on the market Tuesday. Julie Ramirez at Harry Norman is listing it. I have already signed with her. You'll sign tomorrow, or she'll file the listing on my signature alone, which she can do, I checked. You're out of the house by Friday. I'm out by the 30th. Yes. The video goes to 3 places tomorrow morning at 9. AutoNation Corporate HR, Pastor Williams. Paul, and I'll call him first so he doesn't open cold. The video is not going on the internet. It is not going to a single person outside those 3 rooms. You will have to walk back into all 3 of those rooms for the rest of your life, and you will walk in knowing exactly what those rooms know, and that is the consequence. I am not your enemy. I am your consequence. There is a difference. Yes. AutoNation will terminate you inside a week. Probably 3 days. Yes. You will not work at that level again in this city. I know. Ron's gonna have to do it. He has 3 daughters. That's what Priya said. He almost laughed. It was a terrible sound. Efficient. Precise, I said. There's a difference. We sat with that. One more thing, I said. Sarah. He looked up. She came to the church yesterday to tell me. You should know that. She was not there to ruin anything. She was there because you weren't doing it, and she could not let me stand up and say words to you in front of my father. That is not a small thing, James. That is not the thing she did wrong. What she did wrong is something she and I will carry separately for the rest of our lives, but she came to tell me. You did not. And whatever happens to the 2 of you, I want you to remember which of you had the guts to walk into that narthex. I didn't know she was coming. I believe you. Margaret. Yes. If you... No, I said. Don't ask me that. Don't ask me whether. Don't ask me if there is any version. I am not going to be the door you walk back through when you are tired. I am not available for that. Not now. Not in a year. Ever. I am telling you because you are going to ask that question at 2 in the morning for the next 6 months, and I want your answer to already be sitting in your chest when you ask it. The answer is no. I am gone. You are gone. This is the last conversation we are going to have that is about us. Every other conversation we have in this life is going to be about a child I did not have, and a brother who loved you first, and a boy we buried in 2020, whose name I am going to start saying out loud in rooms that do not contain you. He put both hands over his face. He held them there. I closed the folder. I slid it across. Read it tonight. Sign it in the morning. Priya's office by 11. Don't bring a lawyer. You don't need one. I am giving you everything that is fair. I am not giving you anything extra, and I am not taking anything I shouldn't. This is clean." He took the folder. His hands were shaking. Mine weren't. That was new. He stood up. He got to the mudroom. I heard him stop. I heard him come back to the kitchen doorway. He stood there holding the folder in both hands like it was a casserole dish. "Margaret." "Yes." "The baby. What am I supposed to?" "Be there, James. Be there in a way you—" I almost said it. His name. I felt it come up my throat and stop behind my teeth. I put my hand flat on the counter. I breathed once through my nose. "Be there in a way we weren't," I said. "That's all I have for you on that." "Be there." He nodded. He left. I listened to him put his shoes on. I listened to the interior door. I listened to the garage. I heard his car back down the driveway. And I heard him stop at the end as people do. And then I heard him pull out onto Habersham Road. And the engine noise thinned and went. And the house was quiet again. The way houses are only quiet after someone who used to live in them has left. I sat at the island for maybe a minute. Then I stood up. I walked down the hall, past my office, past the guest room, to the closed door at the end. I put my hand on the knob. This time I turned it. The air inside was 6 years old and smelled like a closed box. Dust along the top of the bookshelf. A Lego castle half built on the desk, the directions still folded under it. A blue fleece jacket hanging on the back of the chair. Small now. Absurdly small. The size of a jacket for a doll, and the shape of the shoulders still holding the memory of the boy who had hung it there one Thursday in March and never come back to put it on. I stepped in. I stood in the middle of the room. I said his name out loud to the air, to the dust, to the jacket on the back of the chair. "Daniel." My knees went. I sat down on the rug. I did not cry elegantly. I cried like a woman who had been holding her breath for 6 years and 4 months and 13 days and had finally let it out. Part 4. What fell? 11 months is a useful unit of time. Long enough for a marriage to unwind through the proper channels. Short enough that you still remember on certain Tuesdays the smell of the dove-gray dress you left on the bathroom floor and never picked up. I saw James for the first time at the Thumbs Up Diner on College Avenue in Decatur, on a Saturday morning in May, almost a year after. I hadn't expected him. He didn't live near Decatur. I live near Decatur now, a 2-bedroom townhouse on a side street off Oakhurst, 700 square feet smaller than the Buckhead place, and about 40% happier as a building. I had gone to Thumbs Up for the same reason anybody goes to Thumbs Up on a Saturday, which is the pancakes. He was in a booth by the window alone reading a paperback. That was the first wrong thing. James didn't read paperbacks. James read whatever was at the top of the Audible chart and forgot it in 6 weeks. The book in his hands was a library copy. You can always tell the Mylar, the sticker on the spine, and he was about 2/3 through it. He hadn't seen me. I stood at the door with a pager in my hand and watched him for maybe 12 seconds. He'd lost more weight. Not the wrong way. He'd lost it the way a man loses weight when he starts walking somewhere every day because he can't afford the gas. His jawline had come back. His hair was cut shorter than he would have let me cut it in 2021. He was wearing a flannel and a pair of Carhartt work pants, with grease at one knee, and he had a white coffee mug in front of him that he refilled himself from a carafe the server had left on the table. He looked smaller, not thinner, smaller, like something had been removed from underneath him that used to hold him up. I asked the hostess for a 2-top by the back wall out of his sightline, and I ate my pancakes and read the news on my phone, and I did not say anything to him, and he did not see me. Here is what I knew by then without seeing him. AutoNation Corporate had terminated him 72 hours after Priya sent the email. Ron had made the call. Peachtree Methodist had placed him on what the pastor's letter called a season of pastoral leave, which in practice meant he was asked not to return to services for a full year and to enter weekly counseling with a minister from a Pleiades, different congregation. Paul had not spoken to him for 9 months, and then had texted him on a Saturday in February. "I'll meet you at Dad's grave at noon." They had stood in Westview Cemetery for 20 minutes, and neither of them had said anything, and Paul had gotten in his truck and left, and the next Saturday Paul had texted again. Same time. They were 2 months into that now. They had worked their way up to eating lunch after. He was a service writer at Benson's Auto in Marietta, an independent shop on Roswell Road that did not know who he used to be and did not care. The owner had hired him on a handshake. His salary was $39,000 a year. He rented a 1-bedroom in Smyrna on the first floor of a cinder block building, And Maya came there on the first and third weekends of every month. Maya, that was the other thing I knew. I left thumbs up before he did. I did not want him to see me. I was not ready for that, and I did not feel like being gracious in a diner. Outside, I stood on the sidewalk and let the sun be on my face for a minute. A woman went past with a small yellow dog. A man was fixing the awning on the bookshop next door. I walked home. The card came through my mother. Sarah had sent it to Helen's address in Dunwoody, not to mine, and Helen had driven it to me on a Thursday afternoon and put it on my kitchen table without a word. 3x5 cardstock. A photograph on the front. Handwriting inside that I had seen once before on a napkin in a narthex shaking. The baby was a girl. Her name was Maya Joan Chen, not Ashford. Sarah had held her ground on that. She was 7 months old in the picture, sitting on a blanket. One hand in her mouth, the other reaching for whoever was holding the camera. She had James's eyebrows. That was unfair of her. There was not a thing in the world she could do about the eyebrows. Margaret, the note said. I understand if you throw this away. I am sending it because I wanted Maya to exist somewhere in a world you know about instead of only in a world you are trying to forget. She was born in May. She's healthy. James is kind to her. This is the only time I will send you anything. Helen sat at my table while I read it twice. She watched my face. Well, she said. Yeah. You going to keep it? Yes. Good. She did not ask me any of the other questions. She had stopped asking me questions for the most part, about a month after the divorce was final. Helen had the patience of a woman who had buried her own mother at 50 and had learned something about grief schedules the hard way. I put the card in a box I keep in the dining room. A cheddar box. About the size of a shoebox that had belonged to Helen's mother. I keep the things I don't throw away but don't look at in there. Things that are too heavy to display and too real to toss. That night, I sat at the dining room table and wrote a letter to Maya. I didn't send it. I didn't have an address for her, and if I'd had one I wouldn't have used it. I wrote it in the way you write a letter that is being put into a box to be read later, if it is ever read at all. Maya, I wrote. I am the woman your father was married to when you were born. I am not angry at you. I am not angry at your mother. She came to my wedding to tell me the truth, which was something I could not do for myself and which your father would not do. She did a hard thing. For 6 years, before she walked into your father's office, I was the reason he needed someone to sit in a chair and listen. I did not know how to sit in that chair. I am learning now alone, a little late. I want to tell you about your brother. I stopped for a minute. I got up. I made tea. I came back and sat down. His name was Daniel. He would be 16 this year. He loved bridges. He asked me about 3 weeks before he died why bridges had to hold themselves up and hold everyone else up at the same time. He wanted to know who holds the bridge up. I did not have an answer for him then. I have one now. Other people hold the bridge up. That is the whole answer. The engineer does not stand under it alone. I wish I had said that to him. I wish I had said it in time. I am telling you because you might need the answer someday, and because your brother asked the question first, and he deserves the credit for it across the whole length of your life. Say his name sometimes. Keep him in the air. Margaret, I folded it. I put it in the box with the card. I closed the lid. I went to the cemetery on a Saturday in June for no particular reason. It wasn't an anniversary. It wasn't a birthday. It was a Saturday. I had finished a set of drawings for an elementary school in Clarkston on Friday afternoon, and I had woken up on Saturday morning with the feeling I had been avoiding for 11 months, which was simply that I was ready. I brought the bridge. I had been building it for a month in the spare room I had set up as a study, on a desk under a window that got afternoon light. Balsa wood piano wire white glue. A scale model of the bridge Daniel had drawn when he was 10, executed correctly to the drawing he had pinned on his father's corkboard. The moment forces balanced. I had done the math. It would hold. It was 1.5 feet long. I carried it in a box I had made for it so it wouldn't break on the way. Westview Cemetery is the size of a small neighborhood. I knew the turns. I parked at the top of the hill where the magnolias were blooming, and I walked down the gravel path with the box under one arm. At his stone I knelt down. The grass needed mowing. I would mention it to the groundskeeper. I set the box down and I took the bridge out, and I set it across the foot of the grave stone to stone like a small, honest promise. I didn't pray. I don't mostly. I sat in the grass cross-legged and I talked to my son out loud in a voice that carried. I built the bridge, buddy. The math works. I should have told you the answer to your question a long time ago. Other people hold it up. I was trying to hold it by myself and I couldn't, and the bridge came down. It did not come down on you. I want you to know that. The bridge came down on me and your father and a woman you never met, and a little girl was born into the wreckage, and her name is Maya, and she has your eyebrows, which is funny if you think about it. I am going to be okay. I am not okay yet. But I am going to be. I sat with him for a while. Then I said the other thing. I stopped counting the days. I want you to know that too. I counted them for 6 years. I counted them in my teeth. I am not counting them anymore. That is not because I have forgotten. I want you to know that. I will never forget. I stopped counting because the days are not the point. You are the point, and I am going to say your name out loud from here on. In rooms, to strangers, in the car. When I need to, I am out of practice. I will get better. Somebody cleared his throat behind me. I knew the cough. I had lived with it for 15 years. He was standing on the gravel path maybe 30 feet back, a bouquet of daisies in one hand and a Kroger bag in the other. He had stopped when he'd seen me. He hadn't known I was going to be there. I hadn't known he was going to be there. Saturday wasn't his day strictly, but grief doesn't always run on a schedule. I looked at him. He looked at the bridge on the grave. His mouth opened a little. I lifted my hand. Small. Not a wave. A permission. He came down the path. He stopped about 6 feet away from me, which was the right distance. He set the daisies down on the far side of the stone, and he stayed on his feet. Neither of us spoke for a long time. The bridge is beautiful, he said finally. He drew it. I know. I still have the drawing. I know. He was looking at the balsa wood. His eyes were wet. He wasn't doing anything about it. I come the first Saturday of every month, he said. I didn't know you were. I'm not on a schedule. I came today because I was ready today. He nodded. A breeze moved. The magnolia on the hill dropped a petal onto the path behind us. I watched it come down. Margaret, he said. Yes. How's Maya? I looked up at him. James. You see her twice a month. You know how Maya is. I meant I know what you meant. I got a card. I kept it. I wrote her a letter she'll read someday. I'm okay with her being in the world. Tell her mother that if the moment ever comes up naturally, don't make a moment for it. Yeah. Okay. He stood there with his hands in his jacket pockets. Margaret. I'm sorry. I know you are. I'm going to be sorry for the rest of my life. I know. That's not a play for anything. That's just James. Yeah. I know. He stood with it for a minute. Then he nodded to the stone. He said quiet to our son. I'll see you next Saturday, buddy. Then he turned around and walked up the path toward his truck, and I watched him go until he was small against the top of the hill, and then I could not see him anymore. I sat with Daniel for another 20 minutes. I told him about the townhouse. I told him about the elementary school in Clarkston, which had a green roof and a rain garden and a library with a reading nook the size of a treehouse. I told him about Helen's plan to learn to paddleboard at 69, which was going to end in an emergency room visit, and about his grandfather's TikTok account, which had 11 followers, all of them retired. Accountants. I told him I loved him. I stood up. I put my hand on the top of the stone. Warm under the sun. I walked back up the path to my car. I didn't win exactly. James didn't lose exactly. He lost a dealership and a church and 15 years of a marriage that had been hollow on my side for most of it, and he had kicked me in front of 300 people, and those two debts did not balance on any ledger I believe in, but I was walking to a truck in a cemetery, as a man who knew what he had done, and that was a different kind of man than the one who had put his hand on a crying woman's shoulder at an altar 11 months ago. The ledger is not mine to close. Sarah didn't steal anything that I had not given away 6 years before she walked into my husband's office. She is raising a little girl alone. James sees her on the first and third weekends. They are civil. They are not in love. They never were. Sarah knows that. Sarah has known that since the afternoon he went quiet for 90 seconds after she told him. Maya is 7 months old. She will be older by the time anybody reads her letter. Her eyebrows are not her fault. What I got back, sitting in the grass on an ordinary Saturday in June next to a bridge that a 10-year-old boy drew and a 40-year-old woman built a decade later, was not victory. I want to be honest about that. Victory has a shape. This was not that shape. What I got back was air. I had forgotten what it felt like to breathe inside my own chest. 6 years and change is a long time to breathe around the edges of yourself, to keep your ribs tight in case there is something you do not want to feel, to be the woman in a house who is standing because no one has told her she is allowed to. Sit down. I sat down on a rug in a closed room on a Sunday afternoon in April, and I cried out of a held breath that was older than the marriage it ended. I have been sitting, in one way or another since. Some stories end with fire. Mine ended with oxygen. Daniel would be 16. Maya is 7 months. I am 41 years old this September. I live in a small house in Decatur near a park with a pond. I work 4 days a week. I say my son's name out loud in rooms. I am learning to say it to people I have only just met. The bridge holds. Somebody is holding it up. I am not alone. If you have listened this far, you probably know a woman who built a house the way I built mine. You may be her. You may have loved her. You may have watched her redraw a kitchen at midnight after someone said a name she could not sit inside of, and you may have told yourself she was just a strong woman doing what strong women do, because it was easier than asking her what she was holding up and at what cost. I want to say something to you directly in the time we have left. Because this is the part of the story I could not have told you 11 months ago, and I can tell you now. Distance is not protection. It never was. If you are putting a wall between yourself and the person you promised to stand next to you, are not keeping them safe and you are not keeping you safe, you are building a second loneliness inside a marriage that is still technically standing, and a second loneliness will always find a window. Somewhere. It finds the window in 6 months or in 6 years. It finds the window in a secretary who sits in a chair and does not get up. It finds the window in a kitchen that gets redrawn at midnight. But it finds it. If you are doing this, you already know you are doing it. You are not fooling anyone in your own house. You are only fooling yourself, and you are doing it on a schedule you did not choose and cannot remember starting. If you have lost a child or a parent or a brother or anyone whose name used to be spoken at your dinner table, I want to tell you that the silence you have built around that name is not honoring them. I thought it was. I was wrong, and I was wrong for a long time, and I would like you to be wrong for less time than I was. Say the name out loud. Say it in the car. Say it to someone who did not know them. Say it to someone who did. Say it badly and wrong and with your voice shaking the first few times, because the first few times are supposed to be bad. The voice comes back with practice. The person does not, but the voice does. And if you are the one in the other chair, if you are the husband, the wife, the friend, the grown child, please do not mistake a woman who is redrawing the kitchen for a woman who is fine. Fine is not a kitchen. Fine is a conversation that lasts longer than the run to the garage. The person you love may be holding the walls up by herself because she does not know she is allowed to sit down. You are allowed to tell her. Pour her a cup of coffee. Put it in her hand. Wait. I want to ask you something before I go, and you do not have to answer me, but I would like you to answer yourself. Who in your life has been holding the bridge up alone, and when was the last time you asked them whose name they have stopped saying? If somebody came to mind, a daughter, a sister, a wife, the woman you see in the mirror on the mornings, you are too tired to lie to yourself. I hope you will do one small thing today. Call her. Say the name. Sit in the chair. Leave a comment and tell me who you thought of. I read them. I would like to know whose bridge is holding today because someone finally showed up under it. Thank you for listening. Daniel would have been 16. Somebody is holding the bridge up. You are not alone.